Hello, my name is Buddy Mullino. I guess I better turn this on. And the story that I'm going to tell you tonight has to do with a religious experience that I had about 20 years ago in Dallas. The phone call that I received from the Minister of Education at Park Cities Baptist Church one day early in the 1990s aroused my curiosity somewhat, but it was not particularly surprising or alarming, and I gave it little thought as we made plans to meet for lunch. I assumed that he possibly wanted to propose some task or role for me at the church where I was actively involved in the activities of the children's ministry, including teaching a fourth grade Sunday school class. Having grown up in a staunch Southern Baptist family who was very active in our small church back in West Texas, it only seemed natural to me to seek out a similar community in Dallas to continue my journey of spiritual self-awareness. Perhaps we get stuck using the familiar, the learned, the indoctrinated tools of our childhood, the family tradition of church attendance, the idea that church is a safe place to go to for spiritual guidance, whatever the question or the dilemma. I had been attending this church, which was one of the largest congregations of its denomination in the area, for several years. My daughter was still in lower school when I began taking her with me on Sunday mornings, where I attended a single Sunday school class. After participating with my daughter and her peers in a Bible drill competition and later serving as a church counselor at camp, I was asked to teach a fourth grade Sunday school class, and soon after that I was promoted to the job of being head of the fourth grade department. Compliments on my work were numerous, and they came often. They came from other teachers, from the administration, as well as from parents. I was also involved during this time with a group whose primary function was to serve as greeters and help with the morning worship services. This often included reciting offertory prayers to the congregation. So I was fairly visible to the church in performing my duties, and I had become acquainted with many of the members as a result. So I naturally assumed that the purpose of the phone call was to present a similar opportunity, similar to those that had been presented to me before. The discussion at lunch that day, however, did not begin in any way that I had imagined. Soon after being seated, my lunch partner got right to the point. He looked directly at me and told me that it had come to the attention of the church that I was a homosexual. I don't remember my exact reaction, but the shock and surprise at the presumption of that statement. Attention of the church? Really? That, at the very least, begs a detailed definition of the church. It's kind of like corporations are people too, my friend. But after the initial shock and surprise, only a question. So what's the problem? I mean, I did not exactly parade my sexuality around at church. You would be hard-pressed to pick me out in the congregation as a gay man. I certainly wasn't teaching my students about the gay bar scene down in Oak Lawn or giving private makeup lessons for the boys in my class. The person that people saw at church when they saw me was someone who was living a meaningful, giving, and generous life and was always looking for ways to help people around him. What could my sexual orientation possibly have to do with my service to the church? His answer was clear. Homosexuality was simply incompatible with the teaching of the church, and it was considered a sin. Our discussion developed into somewhat of a debate as we weighed the pros and cons of a gay man teaching a children's Sunday school class. At one point, I reminded him that he himself, as well as many other people in the department, had praised me for my work with the children as well as for other areas of service, thinking that actual merit might have some play here in this conversation. He did not dispute this, and in fact he reiterated his favorable opinion of my leadership abilities. He noted, however, that this opinion had been formed before he knew that I was a homosexual. What a strange and revealing statement. It seemed to me to be the highest form of bigotry and prejudice. I wondered what made these scriptures that dealt with homosexuality so much more important in the church's view than those dealing with divorce, adultery, gluttony, or, I don't know, eating shellfish, behaviors that other teachers openly practice without apparently jeopardizing their jobs. But instead of going there, I posed a different question to him. What about when some of these young kids begin to question their own sexuality as they grow up and begin to develop suspicions that they themselves might be gay? Wouldn't they benefit from a role model who happened to be gay and from seeing how this person chose to deal with their sexuality in a positive and even Christian-like manner? Oh no, he countered back. What you are is just as important as what you do. This answer puzzled me because I knew I had control over my choices of actions and behaviors, but I also knew that I had no control over how I was created or what I was created to be. If God had made me a certain way, why would he then not accept rather than condemn me for being exactly the way he had made me to be? I could change my behavior, but I could not change who or what I was. I asked him, why would God make me this way and then condemn me? His response was something to the effect that there seemed to be some discrepancy about whether a person was born homosexual or whether they became homosexual after being born. He mentioned that he had known friends who were homosexual, but none of them seemed as accepting of their sexuality as I did. He seemed interested in the fact that I did not share their attitude, and I wondered if he thought that maybe I should somehow try to change myself into something other than what I was. In other words, not accept myself for who I am. I kept remembering during this something I was taught early in life from an early school textbook. Accept yourself as you are and always be yourself. Predictably, the conversation went downhill from there into the usual and ridiculous rhetoric. And about the only comment that I remember well was when he confided, personally, I do not have a problem with this, but the church cannot afford the visibility of a homosexual in a leadership position in the church. The ultimate cover for the coward. Personally, I'm fine, but they are making me do this. No courage of personal conviction. Exactly the opposite of what we should be teaching our children. Of course, he assured me that I was welcome to continue to attend the church as part of the congregation, just not teach Sunday school anymore. In other words, it would be acceptable for me to continue to sit in the congregation and listen to a sermon, but not okay for me to teach or to serve as a leader in any way. In my book, acceptance with conditions attached is not acceptance, any more than love with conditions attached is not love. The wheels of my mind were beginning to churn. Mendacity was a condition I knew all too well from my upbringing in West Texas, and one that I had worked hard to escape, a condition I had no desire and no intention of returning to. The following weeks after this lunch meeting were an emotional roller coaster for me, to say the least. Hurt, confusion, anger. I loved these kids and the people that I worked with, and I had been enjoying my work with the church, and I felt that I had been doing some good work there. To be rejected in this way and judged as inferior was a bit unsettling and took some time to sort out. Many questions were presented to me during this time. I wondered if I should feel ashamed that I had been ousted by the church that had been part of my life for all of my life. Should I undertake some action of repentance or embark on a long journey of rebirth and reformation? What gave the people of some religious organization the standing to judge me and declare me unworthy to teach their children? The answer to these questions became clear to me almost instantly, and a calming acceptance came to me as I came to grips with the reality that my involvement in this religious institution and its people was not a path that I needed to be pursuing, and not a place where I needed to be spending my time and energies. It was clearly incompatible with God's plan for my life. Without realizing it, I had left one foot in the closet, and I had just been handed a springboard with which to catapult myself out totally once and for all, with no consideration for how other people felt about it. All the ways that I had reconciled my Christianity with my sexuality in the past were suddenly tossed out the window and rendered invalid. I no longer belong to a church, and even though I believe a person has a right to be religious and gay, I do not consider myself to be religious. I do consider myself to be spiritual, and I continually search for new ways to explore and express that spirituality. Was my faith in the Supreme Being who created the universe in which we live shattered? Was my opinion of myself, my sense of value and self-worth compromised? No, these things were actually strengthened. The fact that a few thousand people disapproved of me simply because I was designed to love people of my own sex has nothing to do with me, and I'm not bound to bow to their condescending and misguided opinions. The God that I know and love, who is my source and who looks after me every day, is a very different God than the one there. Mine is a God of love, of tolerance, of acceptance, a God who loves and appreciates me the way I am, which is the way he created me to be. He guides me to help the people around me, to accept them for what they are and who they are, and he inspires me every day to strive to make the world around me a better and happier place. He has given me gifts and talents, including my sexuality, that I think I'm supposed to exercise to the fullest in order to discover and fulfill his plan for my life. How could I do that if I stifled some part of myself? My spirituality being a necessary and important part of who I am, I struggled for a period of time with new ways and places to explore and nurture it. My journey through this process taught me that there are many paths to God and many avenues and options for nurturing spiritual growth. I did not have to conform to the teachings of any one religion or to their interpretations of an oft-translated book in order to live a spiritually meaningful life or to have a relationship with my Creator. I made many new decisions about my life throughout this process. I knew I would no longer be held hostage by judgments that were based upon what was alluded to by a few men in a few random verses in a very recent translation of a very ancient book. I would not tolerate attempts to make me feel less than or inferior simply because God had designed me to love people of my own sex. I would instead choose to live my life openly, honestly, and in my own truth, accepting and embracing who and what I was without reservation. And I would be proud of myself just the way that my Creator had created me to be. And I have to say that my life since acting upon these decisions has been richer and much more fulfilling than it ever was before. If there is real sin for me, I believe it would be in neglecting to be and to celebrate fully the person who I was made to be and running away from the gifts and talents that I've been given. I strive every day to celebrate my gifts and talents and to teach, by example, others to do the same, and to help them realize that they do not have to change who they are in order to experience a full spiritual life. Thank you.